Thank you for the introduction, Zarman. I'd like to welcome you to the Stanford India Dialogue on Media Matters, Shaping Narratives and Influence in the World's Largest Democracy. Mr. Pandey, Mr. Sharma, so good to have you here. We can't wait to pick your brains on the opportunities and challenges facing Indian media today. I know we're in for a great discussion, so without further ado, let the dialogue begin. My first question is to you, Mr. Pandey. In your influential positions within industry stalwarts like the FICCI and government-backed committees like the INB ministries, I'm certain that you've had much experience with contentious issues of media regulation in a landscape that's rife with allegations of media manipulation. How do you envision striking a balance between the freedom of expression and ensuring responsible journalism?
It's a very long question, and I can speak all through the next 2 hours. But let me tell you, thank you, first of all, Stanford, for calling me here. This is my second interaction with the Stanford students. The first one happened in Delhi, thanks to Anurag, where I met some Hennessy scholars, and the question that you just asked, they asked the same question about a year back. So I believe that there is a lot of skepticism on the pressure on media in India and all that, etc. Let me tell you, like all democracy, India has a fairly free and fair media and rapidly progressing media. Okay. Unlike America, where we are speaking today, the media ownership is diversified amongst at least 300 to 400 entrepreneurs. Where in America, it is largely saturated amongst 4 or 5 large corporate houses or business houses. So in any democracy, when you are reporting and when you are doing your job, the establishment has a dialogue with you, or what you call the presser tactics, right? It is very normal. It is understandable that the establishment would like to their side of narrative to also go on the television channel. And I'm in a television business and digital business. I must explain to you that how we were trained in television, that in newspaper, for example, you write an editorial page and you have a view. The editors invite, contrary to that view, for someone to write in the next page, which is called the op-ed page. So you can choose what you want to read, unlike television where everything is a front page. So we have to very carefully curate as to what the audience is looking for, and such requests from a different government when it comes, we look at it dispassionately and sometime obey or sometime don't obey. And that is true from all the news channels. I also tell you that that it is not easy to stand to the truth. What has just now happened in West Bengal, for example, our editor there has been summoned by the local authorities, and we are fighting cases in the court right now. All these things are given in the job. So pressure always comes from the government or the interest groups or the social media as to how we should run the channel. But I think good newsroom runs independently, and Indian newsrooms run independently.
Great, that was great insight. Mr. Sharma, you have advised media dynamics in the past, and I have a similar question for you, but with the added pressure of politics. What do you propose to counter the growing trend of state-controlled media narratives, where governments could potentially use public broadcasters as propaganda tools to manipulate public opinion or suppress dissent, for example?
Right. So, you must understand that private media picked up in television in the 90s. Before that, there was private print, but broadcast and, where news networks could be launched and anybody could launch and get a license and broadcast anything began in 1990s. And that was the time when this monopoly of state government, of the national government's broadcast networks, Doordarshan and Akashwani. Basically, that was the beginning of the end of their monopoly, right? And in the 30 years plus since, what we've seen is a wide variety of private networks proliferating across the country in every language possible. You know, if you go to a town like Jaipur, I was actually in a town of Jaisalmer a few months ago, and you know, you click on the TV in the hotel room and you surf. You go through 10 networks which are only about the locality around Jaisalmer and the region, right? You go to Jaipur, if you go to Uttar Pradesh, you go to any of the states. So it's so much, and a lot of local cable television. It's pretty much like what's happening in USA. You know that every region has its own network and a wide variety. So honestly, today the government's network is a small percentage of the entire broadcasting ecosystem. Uh, Understand that a government-owned network is a public service broadcaster. You know, the same as you have NPR in India, in the US. Their role uh, is essentially to talk about government policies and have very clean, non-agenda, bipartisan information being given. And I think that's a very important role. I would not call it propaganda. It's propaganda when there is no other option available for a viewer. When an option is available to a viewer, then it cannot be propaganda because you can easily surf. You know, it takes 30 seconds or less to go through 10 more channels as you're surfing. So I think the age of propaganda is pretty much over. What you do have, I mean, propaganda in terms of government controlled monopolistic propaganda is over. Of course, everybody wants to put out their point of view. The government will want to put out their point of view. The opposition party puts out their point of view. Various elements in the business want to put out their point of view. But I don't think that we can say that in India there is any scope for monopolistic propaganda anymore.
Great. Building on
Not
your
possible.
idea.
Not possible in India.
Right.
It's not Russia.
Building on your idea of propaganda audience engagement, I would like to ask you, Mr. Pandey, how might recent calls for tighter regulations amid TRP manipulation controversies reshape the media industry? Do you believe that stricter regulations alone could address such challenges?
First of all, see, we should believe in free market and free economy. So less regulation is always better. And Amitabh is going to speak after this, I suppose. And Amitabh has said in the India Dialogue, for which I came thanks to Amit Kapoor, who invited me to speak at India Dialogue. Amitabh emphasized that the self-regulation is the best regulation. He wants industry, and the government of India wants industry to be self-regulated. I'm the association president of the news broadcaster, and we have a self-regulatory body functioning for last almost 14, 15 years, absolutely perfectly. So as an audience, you can complain about our content that you don't like. You know, India is a country where people complain about content also, right? So when you complain about the content, it is given a hearing as to what are your grievances, and there is a retired Supreme Court judge which presides over this, and it deals with. So the regulation is not the answer for this. As far as the TRP measurement science is concerned, I have said this before, and I have been in a publicly speaking about this, that the current measurement science in India, which is controlled by BARC with all noble intention, at best is a passable system. It just does not deliver, right? The things have changed, and there are controversies here in America also with AC Nielsen measurement science, because the content delivery mechanism has changed. How many of you have watched television in last 1 month? There is one guy, right? How many of you have watched videos on your mobile? So this is all television. The video on the mobile is not something that is outside television. It is the same TV content which is packaged, repurposed, and sent it to you. It is also live on the YouTube. So I run about 6-7 channels live on YouTube. So the content delivery mechanism is changing, and unfortunately, the rating agencies have not prepared themselves for that kind of shift. Fortunately, because if the industry does not solve the problem, government comes in between, right? So the government is now coming out with a broadcast bill, which is going to be tabled in the parliament or getting passed, legislated in the first half of this year, which I am assuming, where they have made clear provisions of giving licenses to more parties for a cross-measurement science. And there are already companies which are doing it very well right now in India, but they have not been given license. Unfortunately, there was no law or rule for giving a license for this. So the government has to form a law. And if they come out with, I'm telling you, India will explode with the world-class measurement science because we have the best of the IITs and IIMs and the Indian Statistical Institute and graduate students from Stanford who want to come back to India. You know, so it is going to be a great time once this legislation takes place.
Yeah. So you spoke about media and the TV being repackaged and as presented to audience as videos on the phone. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Sharma, on this topic and in relation with regulation. How do you feel about the growing phenomenon of algorithmic governance on social media platforms where these opaque algorithms determine what content users see, shaping public discourse, of course?
It's a great question. I think first, just to build on what Avinash said, see, the written word and the image is not going to change as a form of communication. The format and the delivery platforms will shift. So you will always read something because the words will be there. You'll always listen to it and you will always look at images. Now, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's online, whether you hear it on a podcast, there's several new media which is appearing and becoming part of mainstream. So radio may have declined, but podcasts have gone up. But the concept is the same, that you listen to somebody and get information and get insights and listen to conversations, right? Now, this is where, now, what is the key word over here, which will answer the question which you were saying, is discoverability. So there's another word you can use, serendipity, which is you like to discover something interesting. You want to stumble onto a good book or an article, which you can do when you're scanning a magazine or a newspaper in its physical format, right? But in the world of algorithms, what happens is that the algorithms do this tunneling for you. You click on one, they'll give you 100 more of the same. But I don't want 100 more of the same. I probably want to see some more things which I don't know what I don't know. I want to look at articles which I haven't even heard of. Of course, friends are always recommending stuff. So that's an important force. Yeah. The concept of shareability becomes very critical because everybody is saying, hey, you like this article, share it. You like this article, share it. But there is a huge force of regulation which is building up on what is called addictive algorithms on all media content, not just news media, but also entertainment media content. So which means that it is going to get you more and more and more of the same.
Right.
Which I think it's terrible. Like you don't want to have more and more of the same, right? But some people want to when they're very politically inclined. So there is a sense that between self-regulation and government rules, you have to make sure that you do not take people down a rabbit hole where you're just ending up in a place where everything looks and reads the same, right? But that's not good for democracy and that's not good for public discourse because I need to have different facts. I want to have different opinions. I don't want manipulated information to be offered to me. So I think that is something that we need to be very careful about. And I think both civil society, the media industry, the technology platforms and the government need, and the regulators need to have a say, come together on the table and say, look, how can we do it? But from what I understand, that the concept of addictive algorithms is being very, very seriously scrutinized.
Right.
And I'll tell you something, I'll add to that. Most of students who are here, they were born after 90s, I'm assuming in this century, right? Now, the problem with the algorithm is that it pushes you more and more content that you like, once you've liked, right? So you only get one side of the view. The other side of the view is not available. This algorithm was written to sell advertising spaces, right? Which is now used to push the content. And what has happened in our world that after 2008, the way the world has divided sharply around views, the families have been divided. it is the most dangerous thing to happen. And I don't think so that big tech are going to change this on their own. And that is why regulators globally are acting on it. In India also, we are talking to regulator. Google is a great company. You know, personally speaking, the people out there are very ignited mind and very intelligent people. They also want to solve it, but the commercial interests of these organizations will not help them solve this problem on their own unless regulators come in between. And that is what is happening in Australia. It has just happened. It has happened in Canada. It has happened in France. I'm hearing that something like this is happening. New York Times has already sued them for something. Or in India, we are talking to the regulators as well as to the big tech to solve this problem very soon, because this is not good for the society large.
And and there's going to be now Gen AI content. Now
Right.
Gen AI content means you ask, okay, what's the weather like in India, or you say, okay, what's the political big ticket political issue right now? It's going to gather information from various sources, synthesize it, and offer it to you. Now you don't know what those sources are. Okay, now they are trying to develop it and make it far more transparent. But again, the same kind of algorithms are going to define Gen AI, which is in its very early stages. 100% depend on them for absolute veracity of the information.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, shifting gears just a little bit, Mr. Sharma, you're part of the World Economic Forum Expert Network. I was wondering, how do you address the perception that global gatherings like the World Economic Forum, especially with significant participation of businesses, predominantly prioritize the elite interess? And we know that some critics argue that decisions impacting billions are often made behind closed doors, creating this disconnect from the realities of everyday citizens, the regular citizens. So, what would your response to that be?
So look, I think World Economic Forum is a body which has been hosting global leaders for more than 50 years.
Right.
Right? And it brings both political leadership, business leadership, civil society leadership, and in recent years they brought youth leadership, they brought science leaders, they brought innovators, all on the same platform to engage and understand what's going on, so that each gets the perspective of the other. Uh, they're all meeting in an open format, so there are no closed door discussions happening over there. But a closed door discussion can happen anywhere. Two billionaires want to decide to form a cartel. They can do it in a village in Nairobi, near Nairobi, or they could do it in Alaska. They could do it anywhere.
True.
So if any two important influential people want to do something in closed door, they always have that option. So I think it's unfair to say that the World Economic Forum is only about the elite and doing that, because what it's offering is a platform for everybody to participate.
So essentially, they're asking Pranjal, how can they reach there? So you have to.
Well, there are a lot of people, a lot of young students. So they have created a lot of interesting communities. There is a community which is 20 to 30 age group. They're called Global Shapers, and they have hubs all over the world. They're self-organizing young professionals. Then they have the young global leaders who are reaching positions of influence. Then, of course, there's a scientific community. There's a innovators community. There are social entrepreneurs community.
Right.
So the point is that this concept of an elite just coming together once. Look, if the elite want to rule the world and control the world, they won't even tell you how they're doing it, right? Why would they go to an open conference and actually say that, oh, I'm going to come there, let's all get there, the world is watching us, but we'll do something in secret? Look, it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a trope, and people they like to criticize it, but criticism is welcome. I think what I have seen World Economic Forum is evolve constantly to bring in more and more communities for a conversation, and between communities, and in not just within communities but between communities.
Right, absolutely. Staying in this slightly controversial realm, Mr. Sharma, in an industry that's often criticized for its portrayal of socio-political narratives, I'd be curious to ask you, Mr. Pandey, of a time when you may have faced intense scrutiny or backlash for a decision made by the ABP network, and how you have navigated the aftermath?
Maybe you put out a great story, but everybody said, "Oh, that's a terrible story," right?
I'll tell you something. Our problems are very different than what you student think out here. Our problem are that we have put out a great story,
Okay.
but there's no one watching it. Like half of the audience left us before we joined here, right? So that's the irony of being working in news environment. You have to really work hard for every eyeball that you can attract. So I'll tell you a story. Okay, it is little funny. Okay, but that's the story. So what was happening is that in the early 2010s, we were doing a lot of political stories, and the political stories were not getting much traction because you had coalition government at the center. There were odd politicians who were still trying to sell what was the 1950s election showed, like elevation of poverty,
Right.
equal rights, and etc. etc. So there were not much interest. Consumers were not taking much interest in watching television. So we decided to move to do some remarkable journalism. Right. So we did a sting operation. Okay. On MP led fund. I don't know if many of you know the MP led fund. All MPs get X amount of money to spend in their area of work. Okay.
And sting operation is a secret camera recording of it.
Right? So we did a sting operation. We crossed political parties. A member of parliament, we went and we formed a fictitious company, and they said, "You give us the money," and he said, "Okay, give me so much of money." There was corruption, right? So we said, "Wow, what a good story! It will give us the rating." So we decided to put it on channel in the prime time, and obviously you have to run the promo so that people can come. And so my rival competition channel at that time realized that there is something going to be a great story coming on AVP, and we must counter it.
Okay.
So my nearest competition did a story on how Sholay was made. So when he used to call Dhanno, how the style of Dhanno was. And that show was exactly broadcast at the same time for 1 hour. We got almost 0 rating, right? And that particular program topped. Now, in an environment like that, you are often very quizzed by your stakeholders, saying that what kind of channel we would like to make, but we have to maintain sanity, So what we call, choices being made. So we have a problem not of backlash. We have a problem of, is someone watching or not, right?
Right.
And how do I tell an interesting story?
Yeah.
This business is only about 2 things, okay? That you have to be interesting and you have to be interested in your audience.
Right.
If you understand your audience well, you will try and being interesting in what stories that you tell. And as long as we do it, there is no backlash. I can tell you at our network, we are, it is fashionable in technology company to provide all the meals and sodas and everything.
Right.
We have done this for 5 years for all our employees across India. We much before government of India made the law of 6 months maternity leave, we were giving our women employees 6 months maternity leave. And even now we give them 6 months maternity plus 6 months option for work from home. And television is a business which does not work from home, right?
Right.
You have to step out of the home, but still we do it. We are awarded as the best place to work for women and the happiest place to be. So there is no backlash so far. If one comes, I'll definitely quiz your mind.
Okay. That's great. Very impressive. So, I think we have time for one last question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. Mr. Sharma, with your new book, Next New, which is about the fifth industrial revolution, I think you're perfectly positioned to talk about future trends. And I'd like to ask you if you were to offer Stanford students here a glimpse into a future trend or development that will profoundly reshape how we live, work, interact, what do you think it would be?
Right. So this is the book. It's called The Next New on the navigating the fifth industrial revolution. It's about the fact that 3 huge forces are creating a $25 trillion creative destruction of business models, which means sustainability, emerging technologies, and societal impact. So every sector, every company in every country has to change its business models to a new format. So it's shifting, and this is the prediction for till 2030, which means that everything that has happened in any company in recent times will not be the same in the next 4 or 5 years, or maybe next 2 or 3 years. Remember, this is the region we are in where Tesla was created. Now, why is Tesla important? Not just because of the car it created, but it came out of a completely different sector. The automobile sector was disrupted by a company which did not even exist in the automobile sector. Remember that. Today, I can give you another example. If you look at medical devices or health parameters, were made by huge medical device companies, right? But today, many of you would have a wearable in your hand. Now, the people who creating these wearables for your health parameters did not come from the healthcare sector. They came from somewhere else. So the next new is really about a totally new disruption which is happening. And the business model, which means that the business model of healthcare devices is changing from a risk to giving you data on cloud and analyzing that information for you. So AI-based image scanning, right? So the point is, the advice I have for all of you and suggestion is, you have to also constantly reinvent yourself. The companies who can pivot from the old model to the new model are going to survive. And also the professionals who can pivot from the old to the new will survive. You have to figure out how to remain relevant for that. So if you say, I've studied economics, I'm not going to understand marketing, that's not my field, then you're probably going to be in trouble. Because you're going to be increasingly finding that a new set of skills is required every few months, if not years. So in this fast changing era of industrial revolution, the most important thing is to see what's coming next, be prepared for it, and read the the trends which are emerging. Not everything will pan out the way you expect, but it's also going to be an era of, I would say, informal economy. Jobs as a concept, beyond a point, jobs will not increase. Right? What will increase are opportunities for you to find work. So you will have opportunities to work, but not a 9 to 5 job. Then I'm going to sign a contract and only work with one company. So, of course, you know about the gig economy, but gig economy is not just about ride-sharing companies. Gig economy is going to be about so many other sectors. So I'll pause at that because, beyond a point, nobody can make a prediction today. 6 months later, you don't know. I mean, the whole concept of ChatGPT, while AI has been there for a while, it's just about December 22 that ChatGPT's latest version was launched, and we are in, barely 16 months later. The whole world looks very, very different.
So what, according to you, is the future of media then?
I think that, for example, my sense is that the whole concept of clicking on news is going to disappear. The concept of links and sharing will disappear, because what you're going to see is the next generation of users and consumers are going to speak into the phone, because this year also is going to have Gen AI embedded in your mobile phones. Companies have already started to launch those products. So you're going to speak into your phone and say, okay, what's the latest weather in Seattle? And you'll have 2 paragraphs coming up. You don't have to go on a browser, search for weather in Seattle, and then click into 2 or 3 links and see what's going to happen. If you want to know, okay, what's the next big concert which is going to happen in Bay Area, you would probably get links today. But the Gen AI in your phone is going to say, well, here's what's going to happen. What are you interested in? And it'll give you another few. So you're going to be reading content. Sources may be from various places, but you're not going to be clicking through. So I think the era of clicking, so the era of clicking through, I think is going to come to an end very soon.
Great. I think figuring out how to remain relevant as advice to students and those entering the job market is great advice. And on that note, I'd like to open it up to the audience if anyone has questions.
And Sia has said that if she likes a good question, they get a copy of my book.
Yeah.
Hello. I have a question for Mr. Pandey. So with respect to news, over the past couple of years, especially after
A little closer.
a lot of news channels started coming on YouTube. One of the things that personally moved me was anchors or news channels which had like a more centered, perspective. So as a news channel, when I actually think about these people, it's a little difficult for me to understand how, as an anchor or a person representing a news channel, can have a centered view when, it's like there's left-leaning opinions, right-leaning opinions, and you have to talk to a mass which is either left, right, or center. So how do you project an unbiased view so that the audience?
So your question is that where is the space for being centrist?
Yeah, and how would you project that if you yourself have an opinion?
So if the channel has an opinion?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you something. Not having a view or a bias is the biggest bias that one can have. Okay, because you are not giving the guy the due share that he or she deserves, right? So that's my view, personal view. As far as the news channels are concerned, they are all left center. We are in the center, and being in the center has one danger. Somebody can crush you on the road, right? Because you are standing in the middle of the road. But you have to take that exposure if you are working in a news channel and presenting both sides of the view. The problem with the news, I don't know if your question was related to that the problem with the news television is this, that you cannot attract audience if you're not raising eyebrows, right? So you have to say something which is interesting and controversial. I'm trying to do so in last half an hour to raise your attention to me.
Let me add to what Avinash said, because I've actually hosted shows. I used to host shows. I used to be on Bloomberg Network in India and several networks in Hindi and English. So there are two types of shows. One is a show which is a news show where you're a presenter. You're presenting everything from every side, right? Which is a fact and information based. Then there is a talk show, right, where the person who is the host of the talk show, and as you see in US, right, you only see talk shows, that person will come with a certain agenda, perspective, and that's when you choose to go to that person. So you know that this person is only going to be left of center, or this person is only going to be, a right of center. And there'll be some people who are satirists, who will make fun of everything. You have those kind of so satire is the new news in many ways. So you have a range, and I think it'll keep evolving, but a lot of it is driven also by consumer interest. But I'll pause there.
Great.
I hope I answered your question. All right, thank you.
Hello. So my question is this. So people in different professions, say like they're in medicine or financial services. I've worked in financial services, for example, or as an engineer or an accountant. I have a pretty good idea of what the ethical guidelines are for my profession, right? In journalism, I often hear TV channels talk about journalistic ethics, and everybody claims to be centrist. Who's going to come out and say, I'm an extremist, I'm biased, right? Every human being thinks they're centrist. My question is, I have never seen like a document or some guidelines of what really is journalistic ethics. It seems to be a very ephemeral thing, which can mean anything. And realistically, in the Indian context, so somebody, I think it's mainly one state. But if somebody, a news channel or a newspaper is operating in West Bengal, where law and order is, according to the constitution, completely a state issue, the high courts, the entire justice system is not very efficient or reliable. Realistically, if the government is, essentially a bunch of murderous thugs, how can you be, realistically be, do your job ethically? You're not supposed to die.
So you have two questions. One is that what are the rules that we follow, and how do we do our job in conditions which are not conducive to do a fair and balanced journalism? See, first of all, there is an act called Cable and Satellite Regulation Act. It has been amended time to time. It started in 1995, which clearly lays down the principles of our business. Apart from that, there are downlinking and uplinking guidelines in India, which we have to abide by. And third is the ASCII code, which is where we have to serve the ads accordingly, and we have to declare the funding if we have received for any particular news item, unlike in America. So we have enough guidelines, and within those parameters, all the news channels work. And if they don't, there is a committee which one of the association that I head has got self-regulatory committee which looks into it. The second question of that was that look, you referred about West Bengal. What is happening now is very sad. But let me tell you, the news industry is united. Our editor was summoned by cops repeatedly, and the other news channels ran a story on it saying that this is not done. And thankfully, the India federal structure system takes care of it whenever something goes around like this. But as an association president, I keep receiving letters, journalists being arrested somewhere in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, different places. These things happens. It's a vast country. It's a large country. Something like this will happen. But largely, I tell you, all the newsrooms in India are with the ignited people who knows how to do their job. And I'll also tell you something. Public is not idiot. Okay, public understands. As long as you are serving the public with their interest, you keep getting the rating and you keep getting the viewership. So that's not a worrisome thing that we think of. We keep doing our job. Government comes and goes. No one remembers what happened. As long as you have been true to your profession. And the true profession is reporting what you see, without your biases and your favors.
Sir, everybody has to follow the law. The law is not ethical guidelines. So
No, I'm talking about, so for example, the Cable and Satellite Regulation Act and etc. that I mentioned about, we have our own self-regulatory guidelines, which all news channels follow. Yeah, it is quite comprehensive. And I'm very happy to inform you that Government of India in the new broadcast bill has taken the entire portion of our ethics code.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Thank you.
If anyone else has questions, yes.
So my question is going to be asking you to look into the future. So the nice part with this, how should I say, this changes is that access to information is much easier than it has ever been. But at the same time, there's so much of it, so finding high quality is difficult. The example is YouTube is showing me flat earth videos, which isn't very useful. Do you think that there will be changes going forward where finding the high quality ones are going to be easier? Because right now, it tends to seem to be that it's a consumption of more but less quality than it has been in the past.
So again, I think that's a great thought, but I think what happens is, what is essentially required? You need credibility, right? What do you need to be sure of the content you're consuming, that is it from a credible source, and the platform is credible, and the narrator is credible? Now, these things happen over time. Credibility is built over time. Even if you look at newspapers of the previous years, it took decades and maybe centuries for some newspapers to say that we have a credible track record. Today's age, it's far tougher, because you have literally everybody in this hall can be a news content generator. Now, who's a genuine person, who's giving false information, who's mixing falsehoods with truths, becomes very difficult. So I think today the responsibility on the consumer of information to be careful about what he or she is consuming is far higher than ever before. Earlier, I knew that, there are 5 networks and there are 10 newspapers. These are the trusted ones. Of course, there would be errors, but you knew that this was fine and you could blindly consume it. Today, there is a positive side to it, that in a democratic situation where media could be controlled by only 6 or 7 corporations, the digital media offers everybody a chance to give an alternate view. But at the same time, it is going to be far more important for us to be vigilant about knowing who's right, who's wrong. a little bit of trust but verify kind of approach will really be useful.
But your question on quality content, we invest a lot of money in understanding consumer, and whenever we go and we ask them, what do you watch? I said, we watch Discovery Channel. Okay. And we watch this, documentary, docuseries. But when you deep probe further, you realize that they only are saying because they have to say something, right? Essentially, they want to watch Hindi movie songs and dance around that, right? So the consumers, there has to be incentive for a remarkably good content, and that incentive comes from when people start paying it. YouTube has started a pay model, but it's not very successful because it does not pay per view, right? If I want to sell just one documentary to the limited audience, I can't do that right now, and there is no other technology available which can allow me except the OTT. OTTs are also, you have to buy the entire bundle of this one. It is not pay per view, at least in India right now. There is not enough incentive for us to produce those remarkable, though we do it. Many of the civil servants today in India have seen our documentary before giving their exam called Pradhan Mantri, which was anchored by Shekhar Kapoor, the award-winning director.
But
So-
I'll just add quickly to this, Avinash, and he actually asked, when he asked about how many of you are consuming content on mobile, but there is also deplatformed content, which means if somebody here takes a video of this conversation, shares it on WhatsApp, and it will be given to send to 1 million people, somebody will view it, or somebody can create a video with editing software and change what he said, change what I said, change what she said, and put it on WhatsApp, and
That's the most
200,000
dangerous
people
thing.
watch it. There is no platform. No platform can take ownership of that. It's just that I got forwarded by somebody else and it's all over. So YouTube can't control it. No other platform can control it. But few 100,000 people will say, I can't believe Pranjal said this. I can't believe Avinash said this. Right? That is where the tricky zone is, because a lot of people are consuming information on platforms, right? Where there is no owner of the content. You don't know who the owner is. You don't know who the creator is, but the content is sitting on your phone. Which is the one to be really careful about?
I think he has a question, last one. or-
Yeah, we can take a last question.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I think the new AI revolution, the biggest industry which is going to get impacted is the media industry first, right? Entertainment industry or media industry. So my question is basically, generative AI with stable diffusion are going to create new, like they are going to cause job reductions for creative industry. Like as you have seen Sora from OpenAI, it's creating realistic videos where you won't need those creative artists generating those videos anymore, or like images. So one is, do you think any regulations that might come up in India basically to save that industry? Second would be the fake content that would get generated through realistic videos. Are you even like, do you have a vision for that? How do we counter that?
Vaishav, I must tell you this fake news existed since the age of Mahabharata. Okay? When they said that Ashwathama Vado Naruva Gazo, right? So fake news always exists. And let me tell you, whenever a new technology comes, there is a rumor mongering, or there is a spread of the information saying that, look, it is going to eat away all the jobs. That never happened with the computers, right? When computer came, I still remember when in 1990s, there was long form articles written in India saying that, oh God, all the jobs are going to vanish. People will be unemployed. Technology has only one job. And technology's job is to create time so that we can be more productive. We have been, I can tell you, in 2010 Cannes Festival, when I went, I was given a book, a fiction book, which was written by a machine. Right? It has all emotions. So AI technology existed for almost 2 decades. What we are using right now in media industry is to make sure that a large part of the breaking news job is done by the AI, by verifying the source. And the more deeper work, our journalists should be involved in doing research and putting it together to you. I don't think so. It is radically going to alter the employability, but I think it is going to alter the way you consume content and news. It is going to change. But we have to see how it does, and it will be. I'm an optimist. The future is always better than what it is today.
You know, the point is that on fake news, there is now strong regulatory impetus coming on saying that if it's AI generated content, it needs to be watermarked. So there are a lot of ideas being floated that how do you distinguish content created by a human versus a content created by AI? And which is where regulations will come saying that if you have created an algorithm to do something like this, it's incumbent on you to also have embedded in it the source of who did it and how it was done. So that when something like this watermarking, now there are some people say that it may not work, it can be removed. A lot of debates are going on, but what is sure is that people will demand accountability for content which is created. And which brings me back to the point, if you see content where you're not sure who the owner is, you
Don't
don't know
forward
who the
it.
creator is, please do not believe it.
And don't forward it.
And don't forward it because you were then the editor. See,
You are spreading the fake news then.
I have been an editor for decades. What is the job of the editor? Is a filter that this is not acceptable, this is acceptable. Now, when you have technology, you will have to also play the role of the editor. If you're not sure of something, don't forward it and share it. But most importantly, question the source, question who could have done it. I think, therefore, the responsibility on us is going to be much higher.
You know, I'll give you an example of a fake news recently. Dawood Ibrahim, every Indian is interested in, right? So a news came that Dawood Ibrahim is dead. Okay, the breaking news came all over. For a couple of hours later, they started saying that in Karachi there is a clampdown on mobile, on the internet. Okay. Then they said, oh, Islamabad has also, this happening, that happening. And news went on for about a day and a half. And it took another gangster, Chota Shakil, to come on different television channel. Guys, you do not have any other work or what? He's perfectly all right. Now, we were at the newsroom and we started investigating as to what is happening. We realized that a first news break was done by a parody account of the Interior Minister of Pakistan. It was a parody account. It was a fake news.
It was a
And it was multiply, people were forwarding, and everybody started believing that it could be true, right? And all those incidents were happening because of some political rally in Karachi and Islamabad, but started attributing to this one. So the biggest job that one can do as a responsible citizen is that, boss, think before you forward. Don't retweet, don't forward it unless you are pretty sure that it's going to add value to someone's life. And it's true. Thank you.
Great. On that note, I'd like everyone to join me in applauding our very engaging panelists.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to
Yes,
thank Professor Anurag Gomeral. I want to thank Dr. Amit Kapoor, IFC, and the students of Stanford for inviting us. And I hope that you continue these very healthy conversations constantly.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a few mementos to give you.
That's why I came here.
For you, so you can give it to whoever you feel.
Okay.
Like. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have okay.
Okay.
I think she's the major requirement.
Right. Are we looking?
Students? Yes, yeah, come.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.